Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about one of America's biggest and formerly great cities, none other than Chicago, Illinois. Chicago has seen lots of trouble and strife recently, mostly because of the rising crime rates and terrible amounts of violence in the streets there. Yeah, there's lots of killings, people are getting shot and everything in Chicago. It's happening every weekend, and every time we turn on the news there's another story about weekend shootings and things going wrong. It's really bad. It's really sad and unfortunate too. I mean, it's like, damn, I'm so wish they could just fix things up there. But the problem is leadership. I mean, the problem is they've been electing Democrats for many decades, and frankly, they're just ruining the city. They're not making things better. The Democrats have had control of Chicago for far too long, and people just keep voting them in despite them being corrupt, despite them ruining things there, the crime rates going up, and all this kinds of bad stuff. Like, Chicago's had a lot of problems, and today we're focusing on one specific Chicago person, the mayor of Chicago. Her name's Lori Lightfoot, and she has a very interesting look, to say the least. You can see her in this article right here. She's got a very interesting look, and she's also had some interesting stories recently. You see, first, she was refusing any federal help. Like, her town has been suffering. There's been a lot of not only these murders that have been going on for years, but also these riots and the new wave of violence that happened this summer in response to these terrible arrests that have gone wrong. People have been rioting in streets across the country, and Chicago's seen some of the worst of it. They already had a problem there with crime. So the fact that that came in too has made things even more dangerous there. And that's why people have suggested, hey, let's get some help. Let's bring in the feds, let's get some National Guard in here, some troops or something to try to stop these kinds of bad things. They wanted possibly send in federal agents or something. And initially, this mayor actually refused that. From what I remember, she was saying, no, if you send in people, we're going to arrest them. They didn't want help. They're just being stubborn and too proud. They don't want to take help from Trump. And they actually admitted this too. In another point, they said they didn't want to take federal help from Trump because it would make him look good when they helped. They're so political right now. This mayor is so dug in with these Democratic politicians and stuff. She doesn't even want to help her own town. She'd rather her town suffer instead of making Trump look good. And that's just really the worst thing that could happen. I think even a decent person, even the most political person, would recognize, hey, sometimes we got to put party stuff aside and just, fix our city. People are dying. I can't believe they would try to refuse help when they just obviously so desperately need it. So we're going to talk more about that story, and we're going to get to this article. And there's also another funny video where she had this whole staged kind of event about the census, and she brought in this cowboy character to get people to commit and sign up for the census. The census is this thing we do in America where, you take note of everyone that lives in your city. You kind of take this survey and take account of how many people are in each city. It's something America does every 10 years or so. And that's another thing we'll get to at the end. But let's start with this article. It says, Trump Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot agreed to deployment of federal agents. So she's finally agreeing to take some help. Let's see where this goes. President Trump called Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Wednesday evening to confirm his plans to send 200 federal agents to the city to combat a rampage of violence. In a statement obtained by the Chicago Sun-Times, the mayor's office said Trump reached out to Mayor Lightfoot this evening to confirm that he plans to send federal resources to Chicago to supplement ongoing federal investigations pertaining to violent crime. The conversation was brief and straightforward, the statement said. Lightfoot, who previously vowed to turn away the feds, and Trump, who blasted extreme politicians whom he accused of joining an anti-police crusade, are in agreement over the strategy of sending in agents to plug into existing operations, the paper reported. So, yeah, that's the part. That's what we hinted at before. She said she would turn them away. Now she's finally accepting the help, kind of like a cave in, but a necessary one. I mean, I wouldn't even hold it against her. I would give her some light props here. I mean, she tried to refuse at first, which was just absolutely insane. But I mean, look at the picture. I mean, do you really expect someone that looks like this to act normal? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get it hooked up on appearances, but I mean, they always make fun of Trump and his hair and whatnot, like his spray tan. And then you got Democrat mayors looking like this. I just don't get it at all. But the point is, they're finally taking help. They need the help. This city is desperate, and they really need to stop electing people like Lightfoot in the first place. Mayor Lightfoot maintains that all resources will be investigatory in nature and be coordinated through the U.S. Attorney's Office, the statement said. The mayor has made clear that if there is any deviation from what has been announced, we will pursue all available legal options to protect Chicagoans. Trump is deploying officers to Chicago and also to Albuquerque, New Mexico, as part of the National Operation Legend Anti-Violence Initiative, which is named for Legend Telefero, a 4-year-old shot dead in Kansas City. Earlier this month, federal officers were sent to Portland, Oregon to protect a federal courthouse from rioters and to Kansas City to quell violence as part of Operation Legend. So this is the first kind of attempt for Trump to send in these federal agents. And I think it's worth noting, like, the stuff we talked about before, like, we talked about sending in National Guard. People talk about like troops and stuff like that. Those are just like the first go-to suggestions. Like, I'm not saying we need all the military in there. We don't need like a military state or anything like that. Those are just like general examples. And what's really coming to play here is federal agents, like they're saying here. It's specific, highly trained, like FBI agents, like FBI, Department of Defense, like whichever they might be. These are highly trained officers that have specialties in certain fields, I'm sure. And that's the point that I wanted to point out, is that it's kind of a key kind of distinction, because if Trump had sent in National Guard or troops, like that definitely looks more authoritarian and kind of fascist. Like, I mean, I wouldn't agree with that, but that's what the Democrats are going to go with. Like, that's their hope, is they want him to send in something that they could call fascist and say that Trump's like a dictator now. It's absolutely insane. And, it's already been kind of hinted at with Portland. Portland is where they sent him in before, as this article says. And yeah, they already kind of went with that kind of approach almost, but it was kind of hard for them since the agents came in and they were so stealthy, and like they were just, a small number of agents being very effective. Some of them were in plain clothes, like undercover agents. And there were also points where they were just like taking away certain bad rioters that were committing crimes, and they just kind of pulled them out of there real quick, which, could seem like, I could see how they've tried to portray it as sketchy. They said they were like black bagging them, which is where you just kind of like sneak them out. And, they act like they're not going to get arrested, though. These people are just getting pulled out of bad situations. They already had started violence and crimes and stuff. So this is just a strategy. And I think it's working. I think Trump, he's doing what he can without, getting those bad optics and letting the Democrats kind of rain him over the coals. Efforts in Chicago, however, would not resemble the heavily criticized presence in Portland, where camouflaged federal agents have patrolled streets and made arrests in an attempt to protect federal buildings, according to the Sun-Times. The agents would collaborate with Chicago police and Lightfoot's office under the direction of U.S. Attorney John Lausch, whom Lightfoot, a former federal prosecutor, knows and trusts, the paper reported. This is not patrol. This is not against civil unrest, Lausch told the outlet ahead of Trump's announcement. This is working with the Chicago Police Department to do what we can to reduce the staggering violent crime we're facing right now. The federal teams will focus on gangs, guns, and drugs, he said. They may wear tactical gear or work undercover, but will not be dressed in camouflage, Lausch said. So that's like a talk about their appearance. Like, camouflage is more like a military thing, I think. That's why they don't want them to wear that. It's just like an optics thing, like we were saying, like sending in troops or National Guard and they wear their camo or their military gear. It just looks bad. Like, I don't agree with it. Like, sometimes it is necessary and it's just like an optics visual thing. But it's just gone so wrong in the past so many times, of these real dictators, these real like oppressive people have done things like that, mostly like communists and stuff too. Like it's worth noting that a lot of that takes place in like socialist countries like Venezuela and like places that have had these bad dictatorships, Cuba, things like that. So that's just like an optics kind of note. And I think it's just more important to point out that Chicago is finally taking the help, so we can give them a little credit for that. It took them way too long. They resisted as long as they could, so it's bad look there. Lori Lightfoot was saying, she was going to like refuse the help and sue the president or something really silly. It just did not make sense. And, it was wrong. And I think that they finally faced the music and said, hey, our city is the most dangerous city in the country. I mean, one of them, and they're having so many killings. It's like, please fix the problem. Save Chicago. And another point to point out, like before we get too pro Lightfoot on this thing, pro mayor, let's point out something else silly that she's been doing that I think is interesting, because before she was accepting the help, she was trying to do this whole census thing, which I think is biased in itself. Like, she's trying to hype up the census, and you're going to see how silly this video is.
When I was a kid, I loved the Batman TV show. And when the city of Gotham had a real difficult challenge, one of the things that the mayor there did is he called out and he sent out the distress signal to Batman. So we are doing something similar for the census. And I'm happy to report I'm calling out the census cowboy.
Okay, this is going to get good. I have to pause it because they're about to play some copyrighted music. But basically, yeah, she puts on a cowboy hat. And this is what she's been doing while her city is just burning down, like while people are dying and getting shot all over the place. She's having this silly kind of like rally about the census. And let's keep in mind, like I said, the census is where you count how many people are in each city and state, and you kind of take a roll call. You see where people are working too. Like, I mean, it's not too invasive. It just basically asks your name, your address, your age, you know, like maybe your race and gender and stuff like that too, like your demographics and stuff like that. And then the country uses that for its dealings, you know. But you got to remember, this affects politics. Like the census is where we get and realize how many people are in each city and each district. That in turn makes these kinds of choices in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, in the other parts of government. Like it tells you how much money goes to each city and stuff like that. So the point I'm getting at is she's trying to get more people to do the census because she wants to get more citizens for Chicago, and also just like, you know, get herself more credit and more of a big kind of city. You know, it's she's doing this for her own reasons is my point. It's like political, and it's not like people shouldn't be doing the census already, but it's kind of like over encouraging them. And it's also just really silly. I mean, look at the rest of this conference. Like they're playing that Old Town Road song, and then they really do have a cowboy come out. I mean, can you believe this? It's ridiculous. It's like some kind of publicity stunt. And like I said, I mean, the census is important. It should be done, but I feel like it's almost over encouraging it here. Like the census is just some paperwork. It's like doing your taxes or something like that. Like, would you ever see something like this about doing your taxes? Like, can you imagine a mayor making some kind of like fake superhero telling people to do their taxes? And then the other thing I find really silly is like, she's like saying Batman show that she watched as she was a kid and she saw the mayor on there. She's clearly like thinking she's some kind of hero, like on the Batman show, which I find rather ridiculous, like, because she's like one of the worst mayors of all time. Like, and then the other thing is this comparison doesn't work because it's like, oh yeah, it's like they're having the census cowboy be like Batman, but really you call him Batman when there's like a robbery or someone's gotten hostage, when there's like a big crime. The census is just about like a survey. It's taking people's information. It's like I said, it's like filing your taxes or paying for car insurance or something. It's just like really benign. And like, I don't know, the way that she gets so excited about this, it's like I said, it's because of other reasons. It's because they want to get more numbers and more Democrats like registered to vote and that kind of stuff too. So this is what the mayor has been doing while her city's been burning. This is why Chicago is a big mess. And finally, they're taking some federal help, but it sounded like when we read about it, it was like too many stipulations. Like they're not really letting the feds like kind of help the city in their own way. They're like, oh no, we'll let you come in, but you got to follow our rules. Like we're in charge here, you know? And that just reminds me of like an old movie where they're like, we're in charge here. And the other guy's like, not anymore. You're not. Like there's always like another government agency taking over. That was a joke on South Park too, but that's besides the point. That about wraps things up. I think you guys enjoyed and get the story. So make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Tell me what you think about Chicago. It's very strange and eccentric mayor and this cowboy thing and them finally taking federal help. Also hit the like button if you get a chance. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.